I ran from her for 5 years. Now I have to save her life. They say time heals everything. They say that with such certainty, as if they've tested it, as if they measured the exact number of days it takes for a wound to close and a heart to stop flinching at the sound of a name. They say it like it's a law of nature, like gravity, like the sun rising. They've never been wrong about anything so consistently in my life, because it's been 5 years. 5 years, 3 months, and, not that I'm counting, about 12 days. And the moment I walked through those double doors this morning, the same way I walk through them every single morning, the same hallway, the same fluorescent lights that hum just a little too loud, the same smell of antiseptic and cold air and black coffee from the nurse's station. The moment I walked in and looked at the chart the resident handed me with that slightly panicked look they always have at 6 a.m, something in my chest did something it had no business doing. The name on that chart, Maya Souza. I read it twice. I read it the way you read something that can't possibly be real. The way your brain refuses to process the information the first time because it knows that if it lets that information in, everything is going to shift. The room is going to tilt. The floor is going to feel less certain under your feet. Maya Souza. I said to the resident, "What's the status?" And my voice came out perfectly steady. That's the thing about being a surgeon for long enough. Your voice learns to lie before your face does. You sound calm when you are absolutely, categorically not calm. You ask clinical questions, and you hold the chart with both hands, and you keep your eyes on the words, the numbers, the data, because data doesn't look back at you with that particular shade of dark brown that used to make you forget entire sentences in the middle of saying them. She was brought in at 2 a.m. Car accident on the highway. Not her fault, the police report said. Another driver ran a red light. Blunt trauma to the abdomen. Internal bleeding. She's been sedated since arrival. She needs surgery. She needs me. I stood in that hallway for exactly 4 seconds longer than I should have. And then I handed the chart back and said, "Prepper 2, I'll scrub in." Because that is what I do. That is who I am now. I built this version of myself very deliberately, brick by brick, in the 5 years since I got on a plane and didn't look back. Dr. Olivia Carvalho, 34 years old. Attending surgeon, general, and trauma. Board certified, published, respected, completely in control. I am so completely in control. Stage direction. A pause. The narrator's breath catches slightly before continuing. The thing about Maya, the thing I never fully explained to anyone, not even to my best friend Renata, who asked me point blank at my going away dinner why I was really leaving, is that she didn't break my heart in the traditional way. She didn't cheat. She didn't choose someone else. She didn't say anything cruel or do anything unforgivable. She just loved me. She loved me in this enormous, terrifying way that I was not equipped to receive. And instead of learning how to receive it, I ran. I was 28. I had just matched into my surgical residency, the program I'd been working toward for years, in a city 4 hours away. It was a real opportunity, a real reason to go. And Maya said, "I'll wait for you." She said it so simply, like it wasn't a sacrifice. Like love was just something you decided and then held on to without flinching. She said, "We'll figure it out. I'll wait." And I looked at her, standing in my apartment, in my kitchen, with her hair loose and her hands wrapped around a mug that was mine, that she'd been using for months because she was always at my place, because we had quietly become each other's home without either of us officially deciding to. And I felt the most overwhelming combination of love and absolute terror that I have ever felt in my life. Because she meant it. And because she deserved someone who could receive it without drowning. I told her I thought it was better if we ended things. I used words like space and focus and unfair to you. She went very quiet. That silence was worse than anything she could have said. And then she nodded, and she put the mug down, and she left. have thought about that mug more times than I will ever admit to another human being. Stage direction. A long, slow exhale. The OR is cold the way it always is. I have always liked that about surgery. The temperature, the clarity of it, the way everything narrows down to what is directly in front of you. Outside these walls, the world is complicated and loud and full of things that don't have clear solutions. In here, there is a problem, and there is a process, and there is your hands, and your training, and everything you have given your life to in order to be good enough to stand in this room. I looked at her on the table before we began. She was unconscious. She was pale. Paler than I remembered. But that's blood loss. Her hair was shorter than it used to be. There was a small scar near her left eyebrow that I didn't recognize, that came from somewhere in the 5 years I wasn't there to see. And there was something about the angle of her jaw, the particular stubborn set of it even in unconsciousness, that made me close my eyes for exactly 1 second behind my mask. Just 1 second. Dr. Carvalho? The scrub nurse was looking at me. "Let's begin," I said. "I will tell you what I cannot explain about the next 4 hours. How you can be both the most present and the most fractured version of yourself simultaneously." I was in that surgery completely. Every decision, every tie, every careful millimeter of it, I was there. My hands did not shake. My focus did not waver. I have been trained for exactly this, and training is what I called on, and it held. But underneath that, in the part of me that doesn't show up on any monitor, something was running. A film reel, quiet and insistent. The night she first reached across the space between us at a dinner party because I'd said something that made her laugh so hard she grabbed my arm and didn't fully let go. The afternoon we spent in her apartment during a rainstorm, reading different books in the same bed, because we didn't need to talk. We just needed to be near each other. The morning she looked at me across a kitchen, and I thought, with total clarity, I am going to love this woman for the rest of my life. And then spent 2 years being afraid of exactly that. The surgery went well. Perfectly. Technically. I stepped back, gave the final instructions to my resident, stripped my gloves, and walked out before anyone could say anything that required me to respond like a person. I stood in the scrub room for a long time with the water running. Stage direction, running water sounds, silence beneath it. She was moved to recovery, standard protocol. I checked her chart, vitals stable, anesthesia wearing off normally, expected to wake within the hour. I went to my office. I sat at my desk. I looked at the window that faces the east side of the building where you can see the edge of the parking garage in a strip of gray winter sky, and I had a conversation with myself that went something like, "You are a professional. She is your patient. You did your job. You go home. You do not go to recovery. You are not her person anymore. You were barely her person then. You left before you could really become it." And then my pager went off, and it was the recovery nurse saying my patient in Bay 4 was asking for the surgeon. I want to be very clear. I did not have to go. I could have sent the resident. That is, in fact, the more procedurally standard thing to do. I know this. I knew it when I was already halfway down the hall. Stage direction, footsteps, pause at a door. The recovery bay has curtains instead of walls. I could hear the sound of her breathing before I pulled the curtain aside. A little uneven still. The way breathing is when you're waking up from anesthesia, and the world is coming back to you in pieces, and none of the pieces quite fit yet. I stepped in. She turned her head toward me. Her eyes were heavy and unfocused. That particular look of coming back to yourself after being pulled under. She blinked. Once. Twice. And then something changed in her face. Not recognition. Not yet. But something. Like a word you can't quite find. Like a song you know but can't name. "Hey," I said. Brilliant opening. Very clinical. "Hey," she said. Her voice was rough and low, the way it gets after a tube. She blinked again. Looked at me. You're the doctor? I'm your surgeon, yes, Dr. Carvalho. My last name, not Olivia. I gave her only my last name on purpose, and I absolutely do not want to examine that too closely. She nodded slowly, swallowed, looked at the ceiling for a moment. Am I going to be okay? Yes. The surgery went well. We repaired the damage. You're going to be in some pain, but you're going to be okay. She let out a breath. The relief in it was so complete and so physical that I felt it in my sternum. She turned her head back to look at me. Thank you, she said. And there was something in the way she said it, like she meant it down to the bone, like she was aware of what a near thing it had been, that made me want to take a step back. I stayed where I was. Is there family we should contact? I asked. Professional. Procedural. She was quiet for a moment. My mom. She's listed. Another pause. There's no one else. I don't know why I needed to hear that. I don't know what I did with it. I wrote something in the chart that I have no memory of writing. Someone will come check on you in an hour, I said. Rest. I pulled the curtain closed behind me. I made it to the end of the hall before I had to stop and put my back against the wall and breathe for a moment like a person who needed very badly to breathe. Stage direction. A moment of stillness. The narrator's voice, when it resumes, is quieter. If you're listening to this right now, and somehow I feel like you are, I don't know how to explain that. But something about saying this out loud feels like I'm not entirely alone in it. Then you already know something about loving someone and not knowing what to do with it. You know something about the specific particular ache of a thing you can't quite put down and can't quite carry. I think that's why I'm telling it. Not because I have answers. I don't have answers. I'm standing in a hospital hallway at 7 p.m, with my back against a wall, and a woman I left 5 years ago sleeping in a recovery bay, 20 meters away, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. What I do know is that I'm not leaving tonight. Not yet. And I think that means something. If this story is finding you right now, wherever you are, at home, on your way somewhere, doing something that gives your hands a task while your mind wanders, then leave me a comment telling me where you are and what time it is. Because something about knowing you're out there, listening, makes this easier to say. Subscribe if you want to know what happens next, because I genuinely don't know yet. And I think that's the most honest thing I've said all day. Stage direction, a pause. Then the narrative resumes, seamlessly. She was kept for observation the following day, as expected. I checked her chart 3 times before noon without going in. That's what charts are for, technically. Monitoring. Remote assessment. It's completely within protocol to review a post-surgical patient's vitals from the nursing station. There is nothing unusual about that. What is slightly less usual is standing outside Bay 4 for 40 seconds, deciding whether to enter. I entered. She was sitting up. Not all the way. The bed was at an angle, the way they propped them after abdominal surgery, and she was eating something soft that the dietary aide had brought, with the expression of someone who finds hospital food offensive but is too tired to argue about it. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. She still had the IV line in her left arm. And she looked, I don't know how to say this precisely, she looked like herself. Like the version of her that existed before I had context for what she meant to me, and also exactly like the version I left. She looked up when I came in. Good morning, I said. Morning. She studied me for a moment. I keep thinking I recognize you, she said. From somewhere. There it was. I kept my expression exactly where it was. Years of surgery, of delivering bad news and good news, and news that is neither, of having your face be the most stable thing in a room. All of it, right there in that moment. I have one of those faces, I said. She tilted her head slightly, not convinced, not pushing it either. She set down her fork. How long am I going to be here? 3 to 5 days, depending on how you progress. The repair was significant. We don't want to rush the recovery. She nodded, looked at her hands for a moment. There was a small pause that felt larger than it was. I had this dream, she said. Not quite to me, more to the middle distance. While I was under. Or, I don't know if it was a dream. It felt like something. Like I was somewhere very warm and there was a voice. And I couldn't quite make out what it was saying. But it didn't feel like nothing. She shook her head slightly. Sorry, that's a strange thing to say to your doctor. No, I said. It isn't. She looked at me again. That look. The one that used to make me lose sentences. You have kind eyes, she said. For someone who clearly doesn't sleep enough. I almost laughed. I made a sound that was adjacent to a laugh, and then redirected it into clearing my throat, which was not my most elegant moment. I'll have the nurse come by at noon, I said. Let us know if the pain changes. I left before she could say anything else. I am identifying this as a pattern. Stage direction. The narrator's footsteps. A stairwell door. Quiet. Renata called me at lunch. She has a gift for timing that I have never fully trusted. You sound weird, she said, before I'd said anything except hello. I'm at work. You always sound weird at work. You sound a different kind of weird today. A pause. What happened? I looked at my sandwich that I was not eating. Nothing. Livy. Don't. Something happened. I picked up the sandwich, put it down again. Maya is here. Silence. The particular kind of silence that Renata produces when she's exercising enormous restraint and wants credit for it. Here, as in she's my patient. She came in 2 nights ago. Car accident. Another silence. Is she okay? She's going to be. I did the surgery. You... Renata stopped, started again. You operated on her. She needed a surgeon and I was on call and I didn't know it was her until I had the chart and by then it was... I stopped. It was just the job. I did the job. Okay, Renata said carefully. And now? And now she's in recovery and she doesn't know who I am. She doesn't recognize you. She thinks she recognizes me, but she can't place it. She's on pain medication. She just woke up from anesthesia. She's not... But eventually she will. I said nothing. Livy. Renata's voice was gentle in the way it gets when she's not going to let me deflect. What are you going to do? My job, I said. I'm going to do my job. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, you never told her why you really left. Renata, I'm just saying what's true. I know what's true. I looked at the window again, the parking garage, the strip of sky. I know exactly what's true. Stage direction, phone call ends, the hum of the hospital returning. She recognized me on the 3rd day. I should have been prepared for it. I had thought about it constantly. Every chart review, every time I found a reason to not go in, every time I sent the resident and stood at the nursing station pretending to review other paperwork. I had rehearsed, in some loose way, what I would say, how I would handle it, how to be professional about it. None of my rehearsing prepared me for the actual moment, which was, I walked in to do a routine check because the resident was tied up and I had run out of reasonable excuses, and she looked up from the book she was reading, and she looked at me, and I watched it happen in her face, the slow, stunned process of the pieces locking into place. Her eyes changed. Her whole body went still in a way that was different from rest. Olivia, she said. Not Dr. Carvalho. Olivia. My first name in her voice, after 5 years, hit me somewhere below the sternum in a way I was not prepared for. "Maya," I said. The word sat in the room between us. She stared at me for a long moment. Her jaw worked slightly. I could see her processing it. Not just the recognition, but everything that came with it. 5 years. The way things ended. The silence after. And here. Now. This. "You've been," she started, "this whole time. You've been..." "Yes." "You operated on me." "Yes." She looked down at her hands, then back at me. Her expression was doing something complicated that I didn't have a name for, or maybe I had too many names for it and couldn't separate them. "Were you going to tell me?" I had no good answer to that. "I was focused on your recovery." "That's not an answer." "No," I said. "It isn't." A nurse passed in the hallway. The monitor beeped. Everything in the room was doing what it was supposed to do except the two of us. "Sit down," she said. "Please." "Maya, I don't think..." "Please." Stage direction. A chair pulled close. A long silence before either speaks. I sat. She looked at me for a moment without speaking. There was something in her expression that I kept bracing for. Anger, maybe. Or the cold, flat look of someone who has decided not to feel anything. But it wasn't that. It was something more open than that. Something that worried me in an entirely different way. "Are you okay?" she asked. I blinked. "Am I..." "You look exhausted. You looked exhausted the first day too." "But I didn't. I didn't know it was you then." She paused. "Are you okay?" Of all the things she could have said, of all the possible directions that conversation could have gone, this woman, lying in a hospital bed after surgery, IV in her arm, asked if I was okay. I have loved her since I was 26 years old. I have been afraid of exactly this for 9 years. And right now, sitting next to her bed in a hospital room at 11 in the morning with her asking if I was okay, I think I finally understand the difference between loving someone and knowing how to love someone. One is a feeling. The other is a choice you have to make every single day, including the days when you're terrified, including the days when receiving love feels like standing in a current too strong to stand in. "I don't know," I said, which was the most honest thing I had said out loud in 5 years. She nodded, like that was enough. Like honesty, even incomplete honesty, was something she could work with. "You saved my life," she said. I was doing my job. Olivia, the way she said my name. Not accusatory, not demanding anything. Just present. Just, here I am, and here you are, and I am saying your name because it is your name. You saved my life. Whatever else is true, that's also true. I looked at my hands. I have spent my entire career trusting my hands. Right now, they felt like they belonged to someone else. "I left without explaining," I said. "I left, and I stopped, tried again. I told you it was about the residency." "I know. It wasn't only that. I know that too." I looked at her. "You knew." She smiled, and it was small and a little tired and entirely real. "I knew you were afraid of something. I didn't know what. I thought maybe it was me, that I was too much, or that you didn't feel the same." She paused. "But you did feel the same. I could see it. That was the part I never understood. You loved me. And then you left." "I loved you," I said. "That's exactly why I left." She was quiet for a moment. "That doesn't make any sense," she said. "I know. Explain it to me." Stage direction, a long exhale, the sound of the monitor steady. "When you said you'd wait for me," I said, I felt like I was standing at the edge of something enormous. And I didn't know how to be worthy of that. I didn't know how to be the person who let themselves be loved like that without ruining it. My whole life, every time something mattered to me this much, I found a way to leave before I could lose it. The residency was real. It was a real opportunity. But it was also... I looked at the window. It was also a door I could walk through and call it something reasonable. She said nothing. I kept going because silence from Maya has always made me want to fill it. I thought about calling, I said. I thought about it 100 times. And every time I picked up the phone, I thought, she's moved on. She should have moved on. And calling would only be for me. It wouldn't be for her. You don't get to decide that, she said. I know. You don't get to decide what would be for me and what wouldn't. I know, Maya. She was quiet again. This was a different quiet, not closed, but thinking, processing. I watched her, and I thought about every version of this conversation I had imagined having, and none of them felt like this. This felt too real. This felt like something that was actually happening, that would leave marks. I'm not angry, she said finally. You could be. I could be. She turned her head to look at me fully. I was. For a while, I really was. And then I wasn't anymore. And then I spent a long time thinking that meant I'd finally gotten over it. She paused. And then you walked through my curtain in a surgical mask, and I thought I recognized something, and I couldn't place it, and... She let out a breath, half laugh, mostly not. I didn't get over it. I just got busy. Something moved in my chest. I didn't name it. I just held very still and let it move. I don't know what to do with this, I said. Neither do I. I'm your doctor. I know. That matters. Yes, she said. It does. A pause. But you're also Olivia. That matters too. Stage direction. The monitor beeps. A cart rolls past in the hallway. The world outside the room continues. Inside it, something shifts. On the 4th day, her mother came. I wasn't expecting to run into them. I had made a science of timing my check-ins to when the room was likely empty of visitors. Early morning, late rounds, the gaps between regular visiting hours. But the hospital schedule is not a controlled environment, and I rounded the corner to Bay 4 at 3 in the afternoon, and I heard them before I reached the curtain. Her mother's voice, a little lower than I remembered, a little slower, the way voices go with age. And Maya's voice answering her, soft and patient in the particular way she always was with her mother. This careful tenderness that she extended to people she loved, that willingness to slow down and meet someone exactly where they were. I stopped outside the curtain. I should have walked in. I should have knocked on the wall the way I would with any other patient, said something brief and professional, noted her progress, and walked out. That was the procedure. That was what made sense. Instead, I stood there for a moment, and I listened. Not to the words, I couldn't make them out clearly. Just to the texture of their voices together. The rhythm of a mother and daughter talking the way they talk, when nobody is performing anything. And I felt something that I can only describe as grief for a specific kind of time. Not for the relationship I didn't have with Maya, for the time I spent being absent from my own life, the years I spent in a city 4 hours away being very busy and very skilled and very alone, telling myself it was enough, telling myself it was the right call. There are decisions you make that don't announce themselves as mistakes right away. They just sit quietly at the edge of your life until one day you're standing in a hospital hallway listening to 2 voices, and you understand, with sudden and complete clarity, exactly what you chose not to have. I exhaled. I went back to the nursing station and reviewed her chart from there. Stage direction. Papers being set down. The pause of someone composing themselves. That evening, late, when the floor had gone quiet the way it does after 8. The overhead lights dimmed, the traffic of the day died down, just the monitors and the soft footfall of the night nurses. I went back to the room. I didn't have a clinical reason. I want to be honest about that. I had checked her chart. I had confirmed her vitals. The resident had done the evening assessment. There was no medical reason for me to be standing in the doorway of Bay 4 at 9:15 at night. She was awake, reading again, same book further in. The bedside lamp was on, and she looked warmer in that light than she had all week. Less pale, more present. She looked like someone who was going to be fine. She looked up. "You're still here," she said. "I had a late case." True. Also not the reason I was standing there. She studied me for a moment, set the book face down on her lap. "Come in or don't," she said, "but stop standing in the doorway." I came in. I sat in the chair that had become, over the course of the week, functionally mine. The one slightly closer to the window. I don't know when that happened. "What are you reading?" I asked. She turned the book over to show me the cover. I didn't recognize it. My mother brought it. I haven't actually been reading it. I've been thinking and holding it open as a prop. Thinking about what? She was quiet for a moment. Whether I'm angry at you, whether I'm supposed to be. She looked at the window. My friend, my best friend, Camilla, she knows. About us. About what happened. She told me for 2 years that I should be furious, that you didn't deserve to just disappear and then reappear as my surgeon like some kind of... She almost smiled. She used more colorful language. She's not wrong, I said. She's not entirely wrong. Maya turned back to look at me. But she's also never been afraid of something she loved. She doesn't know what that is, so she can only see one version of what happened. I held very still. That doesn't excuse it, I said. Being afraid isn't an excuse. No, she agreed. It isn't. She picked at the edge of the book cover. But it's a reason. And reasons aren't the same as excuses, even if they feel the same from the outside. I thought about every person who had ever looked at me and Maya together, in the years before I left, the easy and the difficult years, the years when we were still figuring out what we were and what we meant. And I thought about the particular way some of those people looked. The slight pause before saying anything, the careful language, the polite, specific distance that certain people maintain when they don't have words for what you are, but they have feelings about it. I thought about Maya's aunt, who had stopped speaking to her for a year when she found out. I thought about the colleague who had once asked me, in a tone that was technically neutral, whether I found it difficult to maintain professional relationships given my... And then he had paused, searching for a word, and I had let him search, and I had looked at him until he looked away. I thought about all the ways the world makes you feel that the love you have is something that needs to be defended before it can be offered. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yes. The year I left, the year after, was it hard? Not, I mean beyond what I did. Was it hard in other ways?" She looked at me for a moment. Then, "My aunt didn't come to my cousin's wedding because I was going to be there with a girlfriend. That was about 8 months after you left." She said it simply, without performance. So yes, there were other ways. I felt anger, clean and specific, on her behalf. "I'm sorry," I said. "You didn't do that." "I know. I'm still sorry." I paused. "I'm sorry I wasn't there." She looked at me. Something softened in her face that she didn't try to stop. "I'm sorry too," she said. "That you've been carrying this for 5 years and didn't think you were allowed to put it down." I don't know what I expected from this conversation. I don't know what version of Maya I expected to find after 5 years. But I had not expected this. This woman who had every reason to be bitter, and was instead sitting with a book she wasn't reading, making space for my fear like it was something she'd been tending for me in my absence. She was always going to be more than I deserved, and maybe that is the wrong way to think about it. Maybe nobody deserves love. Maybe it isn't a transaction. Maybe the point is only whether you choose to be present for it or not. I was choosing to be present. She was discharged on day 5. I managed her care with complete professionalism. I also spent an unreasonable portion of those 5 days finding reasons to be the one who checked on her rather than delegating it. I have made peace with this inconsistency. The morning of discharge, she was dressed in clothes her mother had brought, a dark green sweater that I didn't recognize, which reminded me again of all the years of her I hadn't seen. She was sitting in the chair by the window when I came in with the discharge papers. The morning light was coming in sideways, the winter kind, thin and clear, and it caught the side of her face in a way that made me stop in the doorway for just a moment before she heard me and turned. "All the paperwork," I said. I held it up. Very professional. Very normal. A surgeon and her patient, completing a standard discharge procedure. "Great." She took the folder, looked at me over it. "So this is it. This is it. I go back to my life, and you go back to yours. That's typically how discharge works, yes." She held my gaze. "Is that what you want?" The question landed in the room and took up all the space. I thought about 5 years of absence. I thought about a name on a chart and 4 seconds in a hallway where I could have handed it back and called someone else. I thought about a mug in a kitchen. I thought about what Renata had said. "You never told her why you really left." I thought about Maya saying you don't get to decide what would be for me, and what a profoundly correct thing that was to say. "No," I said. She waited. "I don't want that." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I don't know how to do this, Maya. I still don't. I'm still the same person who was afraid. I've just gotten better at hiding it. I can't promise I won't be that person again. I'm not going to tell you I've fixed myself, and everything will be different now, because I don't know if that's true. I'm not asking you to promise that." "What are you asking?" She set the folder down on the bed, looked at her hands for a moment. "I'm asking if you want to try. That's all. Not a guarantee. Not a promise. Just, do you want to try?" I thought about the people in the world who receive love easily, who let it in without holding their breath, who don't build entire careers and entire cities of distance between themselves and the thing they want most. I have always admired those people from a distance that I created. "Yes," I said. "I want to try." She smiled, not the small tired one from before. This one reached her eyes. "Okay," she said. "Then help me with these discharge papers because the instructions for wound care are genuinely incomprehensible." I laughed, a real one. I had forgotten what that felt like. Laughing because something is actually funny, because the person next to you made space for it without even trying. I pulled the chair close and I went through the papers with her, and our heads were close together over the instructions. And at one point, her shoulder pressed briefly against mine, and neither of us moved away. And I thought, this is not a resolution. This is a beginning. A real one, not a movie one. No dramatic kiss in the rain, no sweeping certainty. Just 2 women in a hospital room with a folder of discharge instructions and 5 years of accumulated silence between them, deciding to try anyway. I have spent my entire adult life learning to work under pressure, learning to hold steady when everything is uncertain, when the outcome isn't clear, when the only thing you can do is put your hands to the work and trust your training and stay present. I am choosing to do that now with something that isn't surgery. I am terrified. I am also, for the first time in 5 years, not running. There's a question I keep coming back to, one I haven't been able to answer, and I'm not sure I need to answer it alone. I keep wondering. How many times do we leave the right thing behind because we're too scared to stay? How many times do we call it something reasonable, timing, distance, focus, and let ourselves believe it? I don't know if I'll ever fully stop being afraid. But I'm starting to think that staying afraid and staying anyway might actually be the bravest thing. Stage direction. Quieter now. The narrator's voice shifts, slightly outside the story, but not fully. If you're still here, if you listen to all of this, then you know something about love that doesn't announce itself, about the kind that hides in the mundane and the ordinary and the names on charts. Maybe you've loved someone you didn't know how to keep. Maybe you've been the one who stayed and waited while someone figured out how to come back. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle of your own version of this, and you're not sure yet how it ends. I want you to know that I see you in this story. I wrote it for you, even before I knew who you were. If any part of this hit somewhere real, if something in this made you think of a name, a moment, a kitchen, a mug you can still picture, then leave it in the comments. Tell me where you are and what time it is. Tell me which part landed. Not for me, for all the other people listening who will read your comment and think, so I'm not the only one, like this story if it meant something. Subscribe if you want to hear what comes next, because this is only the beginning, and Maya and Olivia are just getting started. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving this story a place to exist. Stories about women loving women, complicated, real, terrified, brave women, deserve to be told. And you, by being here, made that possible, made that